What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. This is TW Motorsports, and today, yes, we are back on the SS. Like I told you guys, we are going to get this thing knocked out of the way. So, in the last video on this car, we got all the exhaust off the bottom side, we got the air intake off, we got the auxiliary pump and all the wiring off. And so today, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to get accomplished, because it's chilly. As you can see, it's rainy. It's a nasty day. I'll probably have to shut the garage at some point, but my goal is to get the entire front drive assembly off, get the blower off, get all the wiring out. There is an E85 hookup that I'd like to get out as well. It goes over here to the computer and then routes back to the back where it ties in and measures the fuel. So that is our goal today, guys. I'd like to get all that down. I would love to get the heads off, but we'll just have to see how far we get. After that, obviously, we're gonna have to take the bumper off, so maybe we'll get to that today. But let's get started. Set you guys up on a tripod, and we're gonna start getting some of this wire loom untied, unclipped, and that fuel rail hopefully unhooked, and the E85 sensor. We're gonna try to do all that first. To get that fuel line off, you're gonna need a fuel disconnect tool. Basically, it's a fuel line disconnect tool. It's just a piece of plastic that slides in and releases the clips that hold that. The cool thing is this is all clipped together, so it should be pretty easy to just unclip. So I don't know if you guys can see, I was able to get it off on this side, but I just can't reach back there and get the other one. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the lid off on the blower, and in order to do that, we just have a couple connections that we have to undo up top. Obviously the lines here, and then just 10 millimeters. I think they're 10, either 10 or 8, and we'll get this blower off, or at least the hat off, and that should give me a little more room to see what I'm doing back there in the back. So they are 10 millimeter, and unfortunately, I'm gonna have to take them out by hand back here under the cowl, and the front ones I'll take out with my cordless impact. I need a cordless ratchet, like a battery-powered ratchet's what I need. That would make things a lot faster here, that's for sure. But this shouldn't take too long. Only maybe a little more than half of them I can get with the impact. Now that we got the lid off, I'm gonna lay some towels over this just to make sure I don't drop anything in here for now. And I should be able to go ahead and get that line off. Now, at least I'm hoping. And then once we get that line off, I'm gonna go ahead and start disconnecting the coil packs and all the wiring along the fuel rail. Hopefully we can just take the blower off as well. I think we have a few connections we're gonna have to loosen up that are zip tied to the fuel rail, but let's get that fuel line out. So I was able to get it out, and it looks custom made actually for an LSA swapped SS, but it's out. So now let's go ahead, we'll cut, like I said, some of the zip ties, get the coil packs unplugged. I might even try to get the coil packs out of the way completely before I take the blower off. Now that we got the coil packs off, I'm gonna go ahead and unhook all the injectors, and then we should be able to get the blower completely out of the way. Once we get the blower out, we're gonna get a lot more room here. And the blower is gonna be pretty heavy, and I'm by myself, so hopefully I can get this thing off without dropping it. But since it's not it's under the cowl a little bit, I think I should probably be able to sneak it out the front. I also took, as you guys saw, the throttle body off. I will be reusing that on the other intake. It's just the stock throttle body. So let's get these injectors unhooked, and then we'll start unhooking that blower. So I got the blower uncovered, and all we have to do is there's 10 millimeter bolts that hold this in place. Now the back ones I'm going to do with this, and the front two I'm going to do with the impact. I will tell you guys, be careful not to drop them. I mean, we're taking the heads off, so if I inadvertently drop one, not a huge deal because the heads are coming off, but you know, try not to drop them. So now we obviously have the blower out of place. We are going to move on to the front drive assembly because a majority of the top part of it is bolted to the head, so I can't get the head off without getting those out of place. And I'm not for sure how far down I'm going to go, but for sure I need to get the tensioner out of the way. It's just a pulley. It's about where the factory power steering would go. This is an electronic power steering, which honestly I kind of like because that's just one less line you have leaking all over, and then the water pump. So these standoffs like this, we'll have to get those out of the way because that will actually go with the kit. And as you can see, it does have an aftermarket crank pulley. So we're going to try to get a majority of that off. Like I said, I think I'll start with, you know, these guys that I can access. I think they look like 15 millimeters, not too bad to take off, and then we'll kind of go from there. So we've got, as you can see, the garage is closed, so I don't have as much light as I had, but we've got the fake power steering pump off, I'll call it, and the two upper pulleys, because we have to have access behind here. There's a standoff that allows you to mount those idler pulleys, so we've obviously got to take it off. Looks like it's a 6 millimeters, so I'm going to go ahead and get it out of the way, and once we get it off, then we should be able to get access to the idler, which none of that stuff is going back on. The fake, what I call the fake power steering pump, is going back on, but all the rest of this stuff is going to go with the kit. Then we should be able to get, hopefully, the radiator hoses unhooked, and maybe we can get the water pump out of the way. Now that we got that idler off, and I did have to take the pulley off the front of it, and it's reverse threaded in order to get the bolt out that holds this mess of wires. So now we got a bunch of zip ties to clip, and we need to make a mess because the next step is we need to get the coolant lines off the water pump, both top and bottom, and the heater core on the side here. And I'm sure you guys can see my breath here. It is cold out in my garage, but we're going to keep pressing forward. Like I said, I've been kind of neglecting this because it does make a huge mess. I did drain the coolant, but inevitably coolant is going to come out all over the floor once we get the water pump out of the way. So that's kind of our next step. We'll work on getting all of these clamps loose, these wonderful GM clamps, and that one I didn't even need pliers for, but yeah, this is going to be fun. Now that we've made a huge mess down below, not much came out of the upper and lower, but a lot came out of the heater core. So, you know, something you got to do. And now we're ready to get the water pump out of the way. I don't think I'm going to be able to reach it with that. I'm going to have to do it by hand, but that's not a big deal. There's only 6 bolts that hold the pump in. Now that we got that water pump off and made an even bigger mess, I'm going to disconnect the coolant crossover up top here. And I'm also going to get this 15 millimeter that's holding it ground to the front side of the head I'm not real sure. I think there's probably a couple on the back side of the head too. We'll get to those in a minute. But we need this out of the way. And this thing looks as though it has head studs, which makes it a little nicer because when I pull the head off, hopefully a bunch of fluid isn't going to rush into the head, or at least into the head bolts, so I don't have to clean a bunch of that out. But I'm going to grab the 15, get that unbolted here from the front. And if you guys saw me unthread this is actually the E85 wire, and it loops in and plugs in with the coil pack. So I got to get that out of the way because obviously we're not going back E85 on this. And then from there, I don't know that I have a pulley puller that I can get this pulley off with, because it's an ATI balancer with a bigger ring on the front for the blower. It actually has a stock upper on it. So at this point, I'm not really sure what our next step would be. I might go ahead and take the valve covers off and start removing the heads, because if I may have to go rent a pulley puller to get that out of the way. Now that we've undone the bolt that holds that ground, I have to take this outer ring off of the harmonic balancer. So this is the overdrive ring for the blower. Just a 3/8 is what it looks like, and I thought I was going to have trouble getting it loose, but it's actually coming loose. So that's our next step. We'll get it off, and then I think, guys, because I need the front bumper off and the radiator out and all that jazz, I think I'm going to move on to the heads after that. At this point, we're ready to start on the heads, and there's a 13 millimeter here on the back side that needs to come off. Goodness, it was tight. Once we get that off, then we can take the valve cover off on this side and start taking the rocker arms loose, disassembling the head. The actual valley cover here, or the valve covers, those guys are 8 millimeter. Now that we have the valve cover off, we're going to go ahead and loosen these guys. I say 8 millimeter on the head, or on the rocker arms. Once we get the rocker arms loose, we'll take them out, and then we'll get hopefully the head bolts out, or the head studs, nuts, bolts. That's what we're hoping anyway. So now we're ready to take some head bolts out. I'm going to start up top here. And they seem to be 3/8. And it's 12 point, which, like I said, I don't know that any of you guys even care, but get these off there. I'm gonna have to go get my magnet, I guess, to get the washers off. There are washers. Try to keep these things out of the head, which, like I said, since we're taking them off, it's not a huge deal, but. And then 9/16 is what the bigger head bolts are. We'll get those off next. Hopefully my magnet will take those washers off, because a lot of times you use assembly lube on these. And worst case scenario, if it doesn't, I can just pull them straight off, but I didn't want these washers just falling all over into the engine. And I'm hoping when I get this off, I don't have a big hole in a piston or a broken ring land, because it has been burning a lot of oil. I said in the last video, valve guides, but it's actually valve seals that I think it's just over time they wear out. So anyway, I'm gonna go grab my magnet, we'll get those washers off, and then we'll start on the inner head bolts. So we have all the nuts off. I was able to get the washers off on the outside here, but the ones on the inside, I'm just gonna have to take off once the head's off. But we're ready to pull the head off, and so hopefully it's somewhat loose. Sometimes they like to stick to the dowels. Well, we'll see if we can get it off of here. Looks like it's loose. Hopefully we can pull it up past those studs. At least that's the goal. Try to get all my wiring out of the way. May end up having to take the studs out. Nope. So as you guys saw, the head is off, and now all I got to do is thread out all of those head studs, which that's not a big deal. I can actually thread them out by hand, and all the pistons seem to look good. I mean, other than being coated in carbon, but I'll probably clean that up a little bit. So now I'm going to go on to the other side, and I probably won't show you guys that. It's the exact same process, but once we get that out of the way, then we'll light the camera back up here and figure out what we want to move on to. I think at that point we're going to have to get the bumper off, just to give me more access and to get a lot of this stuff out of the way in order to slide the cam out, obviously. But like I said, the next part of this video you're going to see, we will be tackling something past the head anyway. So now we have the other head off, as you can see, and just about as easy as the other side. I had a little trouble with the AC or the HVAC box getting in the way of getting that last stud out, but the head was able to come off. But now I think we're going to tackle getting the front bumper off. Like I said, we're going to need it to get access to the heat exchanger down below, and maybe some of the radiator parts. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off. And it's just a T20. I think it's a T20. Yeah, T20 on these bolts up top. And then there are a few plastic Phillips heads, which we'll take off as well. We'll get this panel out. And the downside is we are going to have to take the front wheels off. Normally you could just turn the tire, but I did unhook the steering shaft, and I'm not going to hook that back up. So I'm going to get the top all apart, and then we'll go down to the bottom. We'll lift this thing up and see if we can get this front bumper off. Those Phillips heads are also 10 millimeter, but there's two pieces of plastic here that we need to pop off. And then once we get this out, then we should have a majority of the top part complete. Seems pretty loose right there. All right, so now we got to get the wheels off, which suck. I have to I'm basically going to have to jack it up on the lift because, like I said, I don't have a jack that slides up and down my lift. So I'm going to have to lift it up a little bit, get my jack under it. We'll get it off the ground, get the wheels off. I won't show you guys that, and then we'll go back to taking the rest of the bumper off. I thought the camera was rolling, guys, but I ended up not having to take the wheels off. I was able to jack the front up, and I got the they're T15s that go all the way down the fender liner. And then all you have to do is pull the fender out. It's actually just clipped in here. And we'll do the same thing on the other side real quick, and our bumper should be loose. Now, you are gonna have a few things to unhook once we get it off, and I'll show you that. But let me see if I can hold this. Actually, I'll put you guys on the tripod here. Sorry, it's gonna be a little noisy for a second. And this literally just pulls out. It's like the crappiest put-on bumper I've ever seen in my life. But at that point, I'm pretty sure we're loose. So we should be able to just lift it off. Yeah. And then I'll show you guys what we need to disconnect as far as wiring goes. So there's actually only one wire that you need to disconnect, and it does have a lock on it. So just use a flathead screwdriver to slide the lock out, and then it should, I said, once we get the lock out, it should just pull apart. It's probably been on there for a minute. There we go. Sorry guys, bumped the camera. But the bumper is now out of the way. And we'll move it and we'll have access to everything we need. It looks as though they kept the washer tank, but they did have to trim it. I'm not in love with the fitment of this, but I'm sure that there was reasoning behind it. Once we cut those, looks like we have a couple hoses, but yeah, that's the washer tank. Anyway, now that we got that off, let's go ahead and get this crash piece of plastic out of the way. I don't know that that's going to protect much in case of a crash. Looks like just a couple Phillips screws here. On one side. And if you guys notice, I did open the garage back up to give me more room, but it is freezing still. I'd really like to get this off so I could shut the garage back. Now that that's out of the way, maybe we can get to our heat exchanger. So I folded that tank up, and now we should be able to get the heat exchanger out, or at least so I hope. Looks like two 10 millimeters here and then 13s. I think I am going to have to take the bracket off in order to snake it out. And I'm also going to be trying to get the lines at the same time. So we'll see how easy that's going to be. That may be easier said than done. I may have to disconnect the lines in a couple more spots up here in order to get access to it. But that's kind of our next step. So in order to get this out, I am going to have to unhook these two pipes. They're just not going to thread through there hooked together like they are. One of them is just a clamp, and the other one, well, I guess they're both clamps. This one's like a worm style clamp, and the other one is a like the factory GM clamp. So get this out of the way, pull these apart, and we should be able to get that heat exchanger out, or at least so I hope. I think we will though. I'm going to get that apart, we'll pull that out, and we'll go try to get the heat exchanger out next. So I wrestled with it for a minute and realized that let's just take this bar out. It's only 3 13s that hold the crash bar in place. We'll take it out, and then we will have the room that we need to go ahead and pull that thing out. So because I don't want to drain the AC in this, but I do need to get the fans out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and loosen. There's a couple 10 millimeter bolts on the top that hold the fans in place, and then there's a couple 10s that hold the AC condenser to the actual radiator. And the downside is you are going to have to unhook the transmission lines, which I'll show you on the bottom in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and whip these 10 millimeters out that hold this thing together, and then we'll get underneath and see what we need to unhook as far as getting the transmission lines loose. I really was hoping I wouldn't have to do that. I noticed it had a transmission cooler up front, but it also goes into the bottom of the radiator. So it has 2 of them, which kind of sucks because that makes it, I mean, I don't think you're going to leak much. I'm going to put some caps on the end of it, and I'll show you guys the caps once I get them on there. But yeah, we're getting closer. Now there's 2 10 millimeters up here that hold the radiator to the core support, and it looks like it just clips in at the bottom, so shouldn't have to do anything there. I am going to have to unhook this radiator hose up top here because it has a, I'm guessing, a power steering cooler, which doesn't make sense. I don't know what it goes to, but there's a separate pipe hooked up that I just don't want to unhook. So I'm going to unhook it from the top here, get leave this radiator hose basically in the car. Now I was going to take the radiator and fans out all in one assembly, and I think I've decided it might be a little bit easier to handle if I take the fans off. Now it looks to be that the fans just clip in the bottom and they bolt with 2 10 millimeters up top, And then obviously we need to unplug the fans and all the coolant lines that thread through it, but I think that's it. And everything unhooked, see if they come out. Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier doing it this way, guys. That would have been a pain with the radiator hooked to it. So at this point, we're ready to get the radiator out, and you can see the two transmission lines that run into the bottom. And I've slid back the plastic sleeve, and that's because there's just a keeper there, and I use a pick to knock that keeper out. Once you knock the keeper out, they should pull straight out, and that's when it's going to get messy. Obviously, all the trans fluid is going to leak out. I'm going to put caps on the lines that go back, just some rubber caps, but no way to avoid a mess here, unfortunately. So now we have the radiator out, as you can see, and I did cap off those lines, but inevitably you are going to leak some. Not a huge deal, we'll clean that up. But I want to concentrate on getting the pulley off, or the harmonic balancer. Chances are it's probably going to spin, and I'm hoping not, but if it does, then I'll put my flywheel locking tool into place, which means I have to take the starter out, which means I have to lift this thing up. Hopefully not. I'm not 100% sure because I can't see either if they pinned the crank. I'm sure that they probably did, which hopefully that won't give me any issues. But I'm going to go ahead, go grab, I think it's a 24 millimeter, and see if we can knock this loose with my impact. If not, then I'm going to have to bust it loose by hand, which means that I'm going to have to put my flywheel locking tool in, because obviously there's no compression, and it's going to spin pretty easily, I would imagine. But we've got a majority of this stuff out of the way. The only reason we need to take that out is obviously to get the cam out, because until it's out of the way, we can't get the timing cover off. And I'd really like to get that finished today, if possible, because I need to know if I need to reorder a new timing gear. I don't think that I do, but possibly. So unfortunately, I had to put my flywheel locking tool in, which you can see up there. The starter is now hanging right here. And we're going to see if we can knock that bolt loose up front now. So I have my breakover bar, and then I have a piece of pipe to go on that, because it's pretty snug, guys. So hopefully I can get it off without hurting myself or knocking something over. Now that we have that bolt loose, I went ahead and put my puller on, and I'll see if I can sneak you guys up in here without hitting anything. The way this works is on this harmonic balancer from ATI, I'm actually using the where the ring threaded on as my attachment points. Now, if this were the stock one, I would use a completely different puller, and I'm not sure that this puller is going to do it anyway. It's kind of small. I think I may have to go get a different one, but we're going to try to get it off with this. If we can, that's good. We'll get it out of the way, and then that's pretty much it, other than taking the timing cover off and sliding that cam out. But we still have to take the lifters out and the lifter trays, so we'll see if we can get this out. If not, like I said, I may have to go get another one, but just know that the attachment point will be different if you're using a stock pulley. So as you can see, I was able to get it off. Now I did have to go get another one. I just bought a different puller. Mine was just a cheapie, and it didn't work, so it was just strip it out. But the pulley is off. So now I think I'm going to go ahead and take the timing cover off. That's just 10 millimeter bolts. Now there are two that come up from the bottom that you need to take out as well, and they're just on the front side down there. But then we can get this out of the way, and then we'll be able to determine what I'm going to do. So the stock LS3 cam bolt, the way the cam bolt's in, is a single bolt. Now when they put this cam in, if this is a 3 bolt, I'm going to order a different cam, probably just an LS9 cam, because I'm not going to go through it's cheaper to buy that basically than it is the timing gear and all that stuff. So anyway, let's get this out of the way, and we'll kind of see what we got. Got all the bolts loose, and it looks like I'm either going to have to I'm going to have to take this off. So I'm just going to go get 15 millimeter and go ahead and take the alternator back. I'm going to have to undo 3 bolts that hold it in order to get the front cover there, the timing cover, out of the way. So other than the 3 that were there, there is one additional one that comes from the back. I just loosened it up. I didn't have to take it all the way out. So now should be able to. All right, well, there we have our answer. So as you can see, somebody has switched this to a 3-bolt cam. Not a huge deal. That just means I'm going to order a different one. So at this point, we can go ahead and knock loose these. It looks like they put ARP bolts in, cam bolts. So we'll go ahead, take those out, which is good because they're reusable, and we can get the timing gear out of the way. We're going to go ahead and loosen these up. I don't have an 8mm that is a 12 point, and that's what this is. So I'm going to have to get one of those, but for now I do have a ratcheting wrench I was able to get them loose with. But I also sliced open my finger while I was doing that, which sucks. It slid it on the block, and these things are like, they are literally just like razor blades when you slide your fingers across them. So I had to take a pause to bandage up, and at this point we're going to go ahead, like I said, get this out of the way, get this timing gear off, and I don't know, we may end up pulling the lifters out. I'm not really sure yet. So guys, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. My finger is absolutely killing me, and like I said, I use this finger for a lot of my touch when I'm taking bolts out, and it's just not working now that it's all sliced open. But we did get a lot accomplished today. We got heads off, we got the whole front end off, the whole motor's basically uncovered. The only things really we have to do is get that cam retainer plate out, slide the cam out, slide the new cam in. Obviously, before we do that, we do need to take the lifter trays out as well as the lifters. I mean, you can do the Russian roulette method is what they call it, where you spin the cam over and hopefully the lifters stay in place. But when you have the heads off, there's no sense in doing that. It's just 4 bolts and 8 lifters per side. So not a huge deal to do that. But like I said, we're finished for today. In the next video though, hopefully we can get all the stuff out of the motor, maybe start going back together with some stuff. And I know it's not you guys' favorite project because we are demodding, but that demod money, the stuff that I'm selling, is going for other projects that you guys love. So we gotta get it done, right? And I'm excited to get this thing out of my way. To be honest with you, I don't like demodding either, but it's free labor. You know, doesn't cost me anything, and so I'm gonna do it. And it's stupid to sell this thing with all these parts on it. I'm just losing money if I did that. So guys, if you do enjoy this stuff, please smash that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed, go down and smack that subscribe button. Make sure you ring that bell icon that we are notified every single time we drop a new video. And well, stay tuned to see this thing get finished. And well, let's take a look at some of your projects.